So here we are inside the 2023 Lexus GX460 Blackline Edition. Now, sometimes when you get in this car, it feels like you're turning back the hands of time. Like it's still 2010. Like we're going back to the future or the past. That's kind of what it's like to own this car. But with all due respect, I will say to those who think this car is very old and outdated, that I really do like this car. It's actually pretty sweet. So at Cars No Cap, I purchase a new car every year to review for you guys. I own it, I drive it, I do a full review on it, and this is this year's car. Bought this in January, I've had it for about 6 months, and I will say that my wife and I, and my child now, we do love this car. This car is a hell of a car. It's roomy, it's quiet, that V8 is dependable as hell, and this thing doesn't creak, rattle, or roll. It feels amazing. I take that back. It does roll in turns. But KDSS does a good job of kind of balancing that out a little bit. So overall, look, this car is not meant to be something that it's not, okay? It's not meant to be compared to a BMW X5. If you're looking at a BMW X5, that's fine. If you want to buy a car brand new that's going to be 75 grand and drop by $40,000 over a 5-year period, and you're going to lose your shirt and depreciation on, go ahead. But this Lexus GX460 I purchased for $62,500-ish, and I got offered $61,000 about a week or so ago to trade it in on a new car. So I pretty much paid hardly anything to drive this thing for 6 months and put 5,000 miles on it. Now during that 5,000 miles, I did kind of fall in love with this car. This car has been used for everything in my family, from hauling stuff from Home Depot, from taking my wife home from the hospital with our newborn baby. Car seat fits amazing in the back. It feels super safe. This thing's like, 5,100 pounds. It's an awesome vehicle. It feels super solid and sturdy. We love to drive it. Actually, I think the Blackline trim does look pretty good. I think the black trim and the black wheels, and I think throwing a roof rack on it makes it look pretty rugged. I think there's things you can do to make these look good. The redesign in the interior, I think, is pretty decent. This leather wrapped steering wheel here is one of my favorite things in the car. I keep saying this, but this wood grain on the steering wheel, I feel like I've never actually had a car that had a steering wheel that's comfortable, and I've owned some pretty nice cars, including BMWs. I think the center stack is a little dated, but they did redesign it, and I do like the redesign quite a bit. I think the wood grain on the doors and the dash looks really, really good. I think the leather on the seats, the fake leather, whatever it is, I think this fake leather actually does a really good job. Feels nice. You have heated and ventilated seats. You have heated seats in the rear. You have third row seating. And then you have the Toyota 4.6 liter V8 that is ultra reliable, 301 horsepower, 329 pound-feet of torque. Pretty solid motor. It's the million-mile Tundra motor. That's the motor that was in the Toyota Tundra that did 1 million miles. Contrary to popular belief, it wasn't the 5.7, it was the 4.6. So with all that in mind, I think this car has a lot of value to bring. And this is the last year of this car. As you know, Toyota just released the 2024 GX460, which I do like, I do think is awesome, but they dropped the twin-turbo 6-cylinder in that vehicle, which, could be great, could be reliable over time. We just don't know at this point in time if that's going to be nearly as reliable as this powertrain. And to me, the fuel economy doesn't seem to be that much better. This thing will get 20 miles a gallon on the highway. It gets 15 around town, but you'll hit 20 on the highway or higher, even with my roof rack on. So I'm not sure that the trade-off is worth it, but yeah, overall, I think this car takes a lot of flack, but I do like this car. But don't take my word for it. Let's hop in it, let's drive it, and I'll show you how it handles out on the road. All right, here we go. 2023 Lexus GX460 Blackline Edition. No launch control. It gets up and goes. It definitely doesn't disappoint. I think it's not a fast car, obviously, right? The Lexus, it's not meant to be the speed demon on the road, but I will say that it actually has pretty decent pickup. It's one of those cars that will surprise you. The V8 is definitely snappier and punchier than I think people give it credit for. Horsepower and torque. Horsepower is 301 horsepower, 329 pound-feet of torque from a naturally aspirated 4.6 liter V8 made by Toyota Lexus. And it's one of the best motors out there. This motor is smooth, at idle, at high revs, cruising on the highway, this thing is great. So that's one thing to kind of call out with this car. I think the motor is really the best thing about the car. But before we get into that, as we're driving around, we're gonna give you a quick overview here. Let's talk about the looks first. So 2023, Lexus redesigned a few things. They added the Blackline Edition, I think, in 2022. That's the version that we're in right now. And the Blackline Edition adds certain trim pieces to the front grille, blacks out the wheels, blacks out some of the trim on the tail lights, things like that. And it comes with a unique interior space that no other Lexus GX comes with. They have these gray seats, black headliner, gray wood grain on the dash, and things like that. So I definitely do like this trim. This trim, if you're gonna buy a GX460 and you're not gonna get the premium's like $10,000 more than this one. I would recommend buying a 460 Blackline Edition because it's similar price to the regular premium, and you know, you get most of what you get in the luxury without the adaptive suspension. There's like, you know, the automated suspension that allows you to kind of raise and lower the car in the luxury trim, but it's not, I don't think it's worth it for the additional money. And that's also because this trim, in my opinion, I think is very, very comfortable as well. So this stock suspension, the basic struts that come with, you know, this Lexus, I think are actually really, really, really well damped. And I think on the road, you know, it's one of those cars that like, it's dampened exactly the way that you would want it to be dampened. You're getting, you know, not a ton of jolt through the cabin when you're hitting bumps, and then when you're like taking turns, it's not great, but you know, it's one of those things that it's not meant to be great. It's a Lexus GX460. So yeah, so with that, overall, yeah, exterior styling of this thing, what do we think? I think the exterior styling is pretty good. I know it's a little bit long in the tooth, it's a little bit old, this thing hasn't been redesigned in a while, but I will say that I think this interior styling is fairly good. It's, you know, one of my favorite looking in the class. And this class is kind of weird, right? Because, you know, you have to compare this vehicle to a lot of things that don't necessarily compare to it, like BMW X5 or, you know, the Audi Q7 or, you know, things like that are in this class technically. And, you know, those are different. They're different animals because they're not body-on-frame SUVs. And that's really what the Lexus GX460 is all about. It's one of the last naturally aspirated body-on-frame SUVs, particularly in the luxury space, with the exception of the full-on Land Cruiser, which is the LX 570 now, I think. I think they even have an LX 600 with the new motor in it. So with that, I would say that, you know, this thing does a great job kind of slotting right in there. In terms of the cabin and the drive and the livability with this vehicle, I'll say that the interior space, in my opinion, is a pretty nice place to be. You know, you have this beautiful black headliner. This comes out of a special factory in Japan that, I think it's the Tihara factory or something like that. I can't remember the exact name right now, but this factory is known for quality control, and you see that everywhere in this cabin. From, you know, all the materials where your arm rests on the door, the leather wrapping the door, the wood trim, as I mentioned before, and everything in here is just, it might not be the nicest material, but it's all built so solid to where you don't really think about it in the sense of, you know, is it going to break or anything like that. You know that quality control is like the #1 thing with this vehicle, and you see it everywhere, from the body lines, like the gaps in the fenders, and, you know, the body pieces and things like that are so tight on this car that you really, really can tell that it's something special that they take pride in making. And that's one of the kind of the benefits of owning this car. It's not the fastest, it's not the flashiest, it's not the best handling, but what it does do well is it's a really, really, really quality, you know, high-end luxury cruiser that you can count on for dependability, reliability, and to, you know, be exactly what you really want it to be if you buy it for the right reasons. And that's honestly why I think they've kept this around for so long, because for being a quiet, big, durable family cruiser, I don't think anything does it better than this thing. I think this thing completely kicks ass when it comes to those, you know, targets. And I've owned this now for about 6 months. For those of you who don't follow the channel, I would really appreciate it if you would please subscribe and like this video. It really helps me, and we've grown the channel a lot recently. So I'm really excited to keep growing it. I think we just passed 1 million views on the channel, which is like a huge milestone for me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't thank you enough. And if you're watching this video and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe or just tap that like button. It really helps me out and allows me to make more videos. But anyway, if you don't follow the channel, I buy a new car every year to review. And this was that car for this year. So I purchased this Lexus GX460 Blackline, and I've had it, owned it for 6 months. And honestly, I'm kind of sad to give it up. I don't know if I even want to sell it, but we need a second car in the fleet in the family. So I think I might actually sell it and get 2 cars for the price of this, but I'll keep you guys updated on that. For now, it's the Blackline, and my family loves this car. When we go on long trips in this car, listen right now, the cabin is completely quiet. I'm cruising 50 miles an hour right now through city streets, and I feel completely isolated in here. I feel like I could sip a latte. I feel like I could play some jazz, some classical, whatever I want, and I wouldn't hear any screaming from the peasants outside. I'd hear nothing. So that's what this vehicle really does well. It isolates you from the exterior, super, super well built, and yeah, it's great. In terms of other luxury things that are happening in this cabin that I really enjoy and have enjoyed about this vehicle, it's got fully programmable buttons for your garage door, which is awesome. It's got this really cool little mirror that is not a glasses case holder, even though it looks like one. It actually helps me just see the kids in the back. It's got fully automatic everything. So everything from the sunroof to the windows to, when I say the windows, I mean all 4 windows. When you one touch all the way down, ready? Here we go, one touch. And that's the front window. They all do that, which is pretty sweet. One touch up, one touch down. Sunroof is the same way, long touch all the way back. Things like that are nice little things that, are just nice to have. So it's packed with luxury features. You have the same thing in the back. You got things like heated rear seats. You have fully adjustable lumbar, power seats, all that jazz. You have adaptive cruise control. You don't have lane keep assist though, so that's one of those things that you have everything but lane keep assist. You have your adaptive, which kind of keeps you a certain distance from the car ahead of you, which is nice, but the wheel will not be taken over, which some people like, some people don't. Now me personally, this car has a lot of analog things, so it has things like analog gauges, so the tach and the speedometer are both analog, and I love that. I think it's great. You still have a digital screen in the middle, but the tach and the gauge and the speedometer gauge are both analog, and I do love that. You still get Apple CarPlay and things like that, but in the name of analog things, while speaking about those, I should also mention that the steering wheel is still, not the wheel, but the steering rack is still a hydraulic steering rack. This is one of those cars that still has a hydraulic steering rack. Now I know that's highly sought after in some sports cars for feedback on the wheel, but in this thing, I just like it because you can still feel what the wheels are doing when you're off-roading and things like that, and you get really, really true feel coming out of the steering wheel. So you can really feel what the wheels are doing at all times. And that can be useful when you're off-roading, which this thing is a very capable off-roader. So yeah, it's one of those things that I really do appreciate and have appreciated in this car. And that steering wheel is paired to the standard 6-speed transmission that we have in this vehicle, which I mentioned is paired to the 4.6 liter V8. And then the differentials, the limited slip differentials, are true mechanical Torsen limited slip diffs. So because they're mechanical Torsen limited slip diffs, you get really good traction in all kinds of weather, and that's what these things are really known for. If you have the right tires on them, these things are like literally unstoppable. They have decent ground clearance, so out of the box, like the off-road ability is not going to be super, crazy. But if you put tires on them, say you put a different bumper on it, you increase that approach angle, that departure angle, you beef these things up. I mean, people really build these things into overlanding rigs if that's your thing. Great, this is the car for you. You can off-road in luxury, which is really what I see this as. It's either going to be a family luxury mall crawler or a luxury off-roader, and it does those two things really well. All right, so now let's talk about how it drives. I'm going to take it down something that we call the Governor's Parkway around here, and yeah, let's do that right now and see how this thing rips. All right, so here we are. This is what we call Governor's Lake Parkway. It is typically somewhere we take sports cars, but today I'm gonna take the GX down to show you how this bad boy handles at the limit, all right? Let's do it. No paddle shifters, it's in sport mode. Whew. That V8 will get you going, but you see I hit a bump there, the suspension will jar you a little bit. And you know, that's okay. It's an SUV. That's kind of what you'd expect. Let's take it through a turn real quick. See how it does though. All right, so turn in. Ooh, it'll push you through. It's got a full-time all-wheel drive system. You feel it. KDSS does do a pretty good job of maintaining the body roll. It's hanging on. You hear that V8 working. The brakes will throw you a little bit. They're a little bit grabby. So you do get a lot of body lean in this thing. You know, it's honestly good for how big and heavy it is. I think this thing weighs 5,100 pounds. The body lean is not too bad, but you'll see when I steer in at speed, I mean, we rock a little bit. It's definitely not an independent rear suspension. It's one of those things that, you know, it's definitely a body on frame SUV, and it doesn't do any favors trying to hide that from you. It definitely lets you know. But KDSS, I mean, KDSS tries its best to kind of control the body roll for you, but it doesn't always work that great. But I will say, when you rip on it, you know, you don't get as much you know, front lift on the car as you know, as some big SUVs or trucks will do. It's one of those things that, like, you know, they do a good job toning it back. Let's say that. And it's not, you don't drive this car at the limit. Let's be honest. It's one of those cars where, like, you just want to make sure you can fit the whole family in it and enjoy like a long cruise. What I appreciate it for is passing speed. So when you're driving, you know, on the highway, this V8 will definitely get up to speed plenty fast for you. And when you get up to speed, you'll be able to pass somebody pretty effortlessly. 0 to 60 in this thing, I think, is like, it's 7.5, 8 seconds. So it's nothing crazy, but you know, it's one of those cars that it does a good job. You feel the feedback in the steering wheel. If you have to push it, you can. You're not gonna get hurt. But you know, at the end of the day, it's not a sports car, and that's okay. So that's how it handles. Man, a big rock just flew off my tire and hit the fender well. But yeah, so that's how it handles down some twisty back roads. Again, like I mentioned, it's not the worst. I have all-season tires on this right now. I think it comes with the Duelers, which you know, are decent tires from the factory. But yeah, it's not the worst thing, but it's not an Audi SQ7 or anything like that. Wrapping up the Lexus GX460 Blackline Edition, my recommendation to you, if you are looking for an SUV to buy, would certainly be to test drive this vehicle. There's a lot of reasons why, and I'm going to hit on a couple of those now. So the number one reason, one of the highest, you know, ranking reasons I would say to consider this vehicle, is going to be your resale value. Okay, your resale value on this vehicle is one of the best for the first 3 years you own the vehicle for whatever reason. After 4 or 5 years, it tends to drop off a little bit from your new price. But what I really like to look at, one of the things that I really appreciate looking at, is depreciation when I'm buying a vehicle. Depreciation is your really total loss on the vehicle that you experience. Your monthly payment is kind of irrelevant. And this is one of those vehicles that doesn't depreciate a lot in the first couple years you own it. So if you want to buy a new car, flip it in a couple years, this is a good car to do that with. You won't lose a ton of money. If you do want to keep the car forever, and it is one of those cars where you're going to add it to the family fleet, this is also an awesome vehicle for that. And the reason for that is because this 4.6 liter V8 from Toyota is probably arguably one of the most reliable engines ever built, known to man to this day, ever. There's only a few problems with it that are already known. So if you want to buy this car, you can keep it in the family fleet, and it'll be very cheap to own, maintain. It's just one of those things that, you know, you pay for gas, and gas is not great. The mileage is not the best, but that's another reason to buy this car. Also, I would definitely recommend this car. I mean, I've driven BMW X5s, Audi Q7s, things like that, and this car is different. It is a truck, and it feels a lot more like a truck because of the body-on-frame construction. So if you like that feel in an SUV, or you want to put your family in a bigger car, if you're comparing it to something smaller like a RAV4 or like a CR-V, if you're considering, you're probably not considering those because they're $20,000 cheaper. But if you are, this car is going to be a lot heavier and beefier around your family. And the reason I say you could be considering those is because the overall space in the vehicle is not that much different. This has like 64 cubic feet of space with the seats folded down, where a RAV4 has 65 to 70, something like that. Same with the CR-V. So just worth considering. It is a lot heavier and beefier of a vehicle for that. Another reason would be if you like to off-road. But overall, you know, I will say this vehicle it has a lovable character trait about it. I don't know what it is. It's just got that something that is like kind of, I don't know if it's the feedback you get or the, you know, the nostalgic analog feel of everything in the vehicle, mixed with the modern day luxuries like the Apple CarPlay, the Android Auto, things like that. I would recommend buying it for that reason if you like things like that. This vehicle does spark a little nostalgia because, you know, you probably know someone who had one in 2010, and it still does kind of feel the same except for some of the redesign stuff. But that doesn't mean it's not a good car. It just kind of has a little bit of an older feel, but it still feels incredibly quality compared to some of the new cars that I've been in to date. So I can't say that this is definitely not a good car to buy. So anyway, I want to hear what you guys think about the Lexus GX460. Is it old and washed up, or do you still think this is a good car? And I know they just released the 2024, so also feel free to drop you know, how you feel about that down below. Do you guys like the 24, or do you like the 23 better? Would you rather have the naturally aspirated V8, or would you rather have the the new twin turbo 6-cylinder from Toyota? All right, so drop a comment down below, and as I mentioned again, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already and you enjoy these videos, you like car reviews. That's exactly, you know, who I am. I'll be posting more and more car reviews as time goes on here. Hopefully, you know, they're useful for you and your family and your friends. Please share them, and as I mentioned, like and subscribe if you don't mind. It really helps me out. All right, well, I hope you guys have a great day today, and I'll talk to you in the next one. This is John signing off with Cars No Cap. Peace.